this decision by Keir Starmer to increase defence spending is both expected but also astonishing in lots of ways. If anybody said to us a few years ago that defence spending would now increase all the time in the way that it is, that a Labour government would be talking about cutting international aid very, very drastically in order to increase the amount spent on arms, on the military, I think people would have been absolutely astonished. But now we're talking about 2.5 or 2.6% if you include the spending on the intelligence services within 2 years' time, 3% by the time of the next parliament. And that's only the beginning. You've got a bidding war going on here because of what Trump has said. He's not going to fund defence in Europe. He's putting more and more pressure on the Europeans to do it, instead of governments saying, we do not need to spend this kind of money. There is no immediate threat to any of the countries in Europe, particularly not to Britain, which already has its own nuclear task force anyway, which is supposed to act as a deterrent. It is amazing that they're going down this route. And on the other hand, they've been talking about this for some years. I think what we have to be clear about is when you get these arms races, which is what we've got, Germany is going to double its arms spending over the next few years with very, very serious consequences for the growth of the far right in Germany. When you see these arms races, they don't end up in peace, they end up in a much greater likelihood of war. And I think that's what we're looking at in Europe now. And it's a very, very dangerous situation. We already know the war in Ukraine is being lost and there will be a settlement there, but they're ramping up to another war somewhere else in Europe. The increase in defence spending is going to have an absolutely terrible impact on other areas of public spending. In a very, very cynical move, the way in which they're framing it at the moment is that they are going to cut by 40%. They're going to cut international aid, which is already at a pitifully low level. This means some of the poorest people in the world, some of the people most affected by war, by climate change, by all these things, are going to be very badly hit by that. And we've already seen an outcry from the aid agencies quite rightly. But anybody who believes it's going to stop with the poorest people in Sudan or in Gaza or in anywhere else in the developing world should actually look at what it is also going to mean here, because it will mean cuts in probably in education and health. I wouldn't at all rule that out, even though they're supposed to be ring fenced, but it will lead to cuts in local government and care of children, social work, housing. All of these things will be extremely badly affected by it. So the Iron Chancellor Bismarck, who was responsible for the unification of Germany in the 19th century, talked about guns, not butter. This is exactly what they're offering people. You're not going to get decent living standards. You're not going to get enough food for many, many people. Your wage is going to be attacked. Your social wage is going to be attacked. Everything is going to go up. But this is all done in the supposed justification being that we need more money for defence. It is absolutely scurrilous. It's dressed up in this ludicrous Churchillian tones, that we're facing this huge existential threat. We are not facing an existential threat in terms of Russia or anywhere else. What we're facing is a government which is incapable of dealing with the very, very major problems in British society, including attacks on the cost of living, including attacks on our health service. And that's what needs to be addressed. I think this is a real turning point in terms of British society and in terms of European society. We've seen what Trump wants to do. We've seen now what Starmer wants to do. And it means that the anti-war movement, peace movements, we need to step up what we're doing across the country. And we need to stand up to Starmer in terms of these huge increases in spending on the military and on war. So it means that every person who opposes what he's doing, please do join Stop the War. We want all our groups to get active. Let's get out on the streets and put these arguments to people, explain to people what is going on, explain to people this is not in the interests of working class people here in Britain. It is not going to make us safer. It's going to make us more of a target. We need to get more trade union affiliations. We need to get donations. Most importantly, we need to organise in whatever way we think we can do. We already have a very, very big Palestine movement, and that will continue because of the atrocities in Gaza and in the West Bank. But we also need to now take this in to the heart of the working class movement in terms of the trade unions, in terms of working class communities, and say we should not pay for their crisis. We should not be paying for more military. And we want a complete alternative. So that's what the Stop the War Coalition should be saying. It's what we should be doing. And we are determined to do this, to lobby every MP, to do everything that we can to make sure this doesn't happen.